What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the XFL Week in Review. I am your host, Mark Perry, editor of XFL News Hub, and on this week's show, the NFL has a little issue with the Houston Roughnecks logo, plus our interview with Dr. Andrew Freeze, who is one of the team physicians for the Dallas Renegades. We get into Landry Jones, Hal Mummy's injury, and so much more. And plus, of course, the latest news going on in the XFL world. So how do you get in touch with the show? Simple. Email podcast at xflnewshub.com with your MP3s or videos, or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that. We'll read it on the show, I should say. And plus, remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate that because that helps us out a ton as well. Before we get into the news, we want to get into what happened this weekend in the NFL playoffs, but question for next week. And I think this is interesting with all the NFL coaching changes that are happening, with NFL coaches being let go. Let us know if any of these guys would be worthy of a spot as an XFL coach. So guys that are getting let go right now as we speak, let us know who you think might make a good fit for the XFL and which team and why. Let us know about that for next week. On to the players this week. We got some pretty cool St. Louis Battlehawks alumni Taylor Henneke. He shined in the Washington football team wild card round this past week. He did really good filling in for Alex Smith. Really made a name for himself. He was 26 of 44 with a passing TD, a rushing TD, and an interception. Those stats are very impressive, but they don't tell the whole story. He just played, he balled out, and they were fired up, but they didn't get the win. But fans were certainly excited. And what's interesting about Taylor is that there's no doubt he got praise that he will probably be the backup, if not a potential starting quarterback for this Washington football team potentially next year. Battlehawks former president Kurt Huntsinger, he posted something about Taylor. And then so did Pat Mahomes. Said, regardless of the outcome, what a great game by Henneke. Joe Theismann says, my hat's off to Taylor. You made us proud. But they did lose the game. Even the XFL put out a thing, said, last night the football world was watching you, Taylor Henneke, and your XFL family couldn't be more proud. So he balled out, no question about that, and really made a name for himself. And it's shocking because he was the backup to somebody. That's the whole part that kind of just makes us all kind of scratch our heads. Like, well, he was the backup in St. Louis. Could you imagine? I mean, and Jordan Ta'amu was a great player. What Taylor would have brought to the table, and of course, he's also remembered for the Bud Light Seltzer celebration. He was definitely a part of that. So, congratulations to him. I think he is definitely going to have a spot in the Washington football team roster next year. There's no question about that. Also, another XFL alumnus, Michael Dunn, he shined in the Browns game's really shocking win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had multiple people out due to you-know-what, including their head coach. He played left guard, and he did a great job as well. Our own Mike Mitchell says former O-line for the Dragons, Michael Dunn, started at left guard in place of Joe Bettino. Dunn was the highest graded offensive lineman, 79.5 in the XFL by Pro Football Focus. Stefanski singled out Dunn as a shout out after the game, saying, quote, I thought he was outstanding last night. He really, really great in his technique, his effort, his assignment. He did a great job. So there you have it. Two former XFL players in the playoffs in the NFL and showing up and playing great. And so for both Taylor Henneke and Michael Dunn, we in the XFL family are super proud of you. And I'm like, I also did notice, and I don't know if you noticed, maybe they mentioned that he was in the XFL. They kind of don't like to mention that very often for some reason, hating on us, I guess. But still, it was a great night of football. Of course, Baltimore Ravens won, which makes it better. My wife was upset that the Steelers lost. I was stunned that they jumped out to that big of a lead. I thought maybe they would come back. But then we got some more proud XFL players out there to watch. So Dunn goes on to the next round. Is it possible that the Browns go all the way and a guy who played in the XFL gets a Super Bowl ring? We'll have to find out later. All right. That's it for basically what's going on in the XFL world, including the news that we got coming up. We've got stuff about Johnny Manziel. We've got stuff about this whole NFL logo deal. And, of course, our interview with Dr. Andrew Freeze. So we have all of that coming up. So without further ado, folks, plus your social media stuff, because you have reaction to this whole Houston Roughnecks logo situation. So without further ado, folks, let's just get into the week that was the XFL. Trademark attorney Josh Gerben released on his Twitter that the NFL has filed paperwork to challenge the use of the oil rig in the Houston Roughnecks logo. Quote, the NFL has opposed a trademark application for the XFL's Houston Roughnecks logo. On December 28th, the NFL filed court documents claiming the Roughnecks logo was too similar to the Houston Oilers logo. Perhaps the first of many at XFL versus NFL battles? Question mark. This is because the XFL version of the derrick is similar to that of the old Houston Oilers logo. Now, Gerben, our own Josh Davis, spoke to him that the NFL would have to prove that the XFL's use of the logo hinders their ability to sell Oilers merchandise and that they, the NFL, have the exclusive rights to use the rig. So the question is, why now? Well, this is what Gerben had to say. Quote, procedurally, when you file a trademark application, it goes through the government's review process first. And then once the government approves any trademark for registration, there's a 30-day window that opens up, which anybody that feels they might be damaged by the registration can file an opposition. Close quote. The original opposition was filed December 11th, 2019, when the United States Patent Trademark Office officially published the mark by the XFL on June 30th. The window to oppose was open. That is when the first extension was applied for. So the first extension was filed in July of 2020. The two extensions were subsequently filed during the bankruptcy case, noting that negotiations were taking place. When the league was bought by Danny Garcia, the Rock and Redbird Capital, the extensions had run out, and now a date has been set by the court for this to move forward. Alpha Apuico, who's like kind of the subsidiary owner of the XFL, has 40 days to respond or the matter will go to court. The date is scheduled for February 6, 2021. Gerben says that this is just an opinion, his opinion. He's not involved in the case at all, in all likelihood that it will not end up in court, but it would instead be settled out of court. Now, this does not mean the case has to go to court, nor does it mean that Danny and The Rock are taking it to trial, simply that the extensions filed by the NFL are exhausted, and now it's time to kind of settle this thing out. According to trademark law, 2 extensions may be filed before the case is set for a trial date. The NFL's standings is that even though the Oilers franchise moved to Tennessee and changed their name, the logo still retains valuable goodwill and customer resignation. Quote, this is from the paperwork. Consumers encountering applicants' mark, particularly in connection with the applicant's services, are likely to associate the mark with opposers based on the similarity of the parties' marks and their respective goods and services, close quote. So in effect, the NFL feels like the XFL's use of the rig could confuse the consumer, believing the two are connected. We will have to see how this plays out. My only question is, while clearly the United States Patent Trademark Office did not have a problem with this in the beginning and approved it, and now we're moving forward because the NFL has a problem with it. So I would assume if there was a problem in the beginning, the Patent Trademark Office, I would assume somebody in there watched football and would know about the Houston Oilers. So that's kind of my take on that, but we'll see how this all plays out. We'll release more information when we know, but hang on to your Houston Roughnecks merch because it might be a thing of the past when the new XFL comes out in 2022. We'll have to find out. Stay tuned. Ever since the XFL reboot in 2018, names like Johnny Manziel, Colin Kaepernick, and Tim Tebow have been bounced around as possible stars in this new reborn league. At the same time, Vince McMahon was very adamant at the time about not having players in the league with questionable backgrounds. The player he was most likely referring to was probably Johnny Manziel. Ever since Manziel was cut by the CFL and briefly played in the AAF, the question was, would he wind up in the XFL? When June Jones was hired as the first ever Houston Roughnecks head coach and GM, he was asked if there was an interest in the former Heisman Trophy winner, who he worked with in the CFL just for a brief period.
No question. I think the thing that, like I said when I was saying there, that I love finding players, and I was fortunate to be around Mouse and Dre Glanville at young ages, that I learned real quick that good players make good coaches, and so you got to go find them and you got to go get them, and obviously that starts with a quarterback, number one, but you got to have some speed and you got to have some skill around that guy.
There's people in this town that have mentioned many times, you've heard it already, it'd be great to get a guy like Johnny Manziel here in Houston.
Yeah, no, I know. I had Johnny in Hamilton. I enjoyed the 5 or 6 weeks. He played very good for me, actually. But, you know, he wanted to get on the field, and I could see that it was going to take a little time for him to learn the system. So, you know, Johnny is an interesting guy. I mean, he is competitive. He's proven that he has won. He's just been through a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. You know, that's kind of a league decision there. But definitely I assume that he'll be in the draft pool. I assume that.
Based on newly released court documents, Daniel Kaplan of The Athletic reports that there was no chance for Manziel to play in the XFL. The league was never interested in him, mainly because of its owner, Vince McMahon. Now, McMahon's lack of interest in Manziel is nothing new, except that McMahon was getting increasingly frustrated with Oliver Luck for not putting that subject to rest. Here's the text exchange from the court documents. Quote, "How long are you going to play this game, Oliver? You know there is no chance in hell," which is a Vince McMahon phrase, "for Manziel to play for us. I will not, in caps, change my mind. So what's your plan?" Luck let McMahon know that he had no intention of signing the troubled QB. It was just a marketing ploy. That's all, Vince. Quote, "Vince, we have no intention of signing him, none whatsoever. We're just milking the story to stay in the news. I'm happy to categorically rule him out. Both Jeffrey and I think it is worth to milk it until the showcases are finished July 12th. At that point, we can say he doesn't fit in our plans." Close quote. But that wasn't the end of the Manziel talk. June Jones said in early September leading up to the XFL draft, quote, "Johnny Manziel is probably on 5 lists and was on one of mine," close quote. Now, the league's milking of Manziel's name is not surprising, nor is it really wrong. The league is trying to make a name for itself, and the press and fans are asking. We know all about that at XFL News Hub. To stay in the news, you have to do that. After the XFL draft, Manziel was one of several names not drafted, and the XFL put the subject to rest. The real issue is the subject of Manziel was one of several reported rifts between McMahon and Luck leading up to the kickoff of the 2020 season. The controversial signing of Antonio Callaway to the Tampa Bay Vipers is another one. So as this legal proceeding unfolds further, we should learn more about how the promising partnership between Oliver Luck and Vince McMahon came more fractured and ultimately led to where we are now, which is in court, which is unfortunate. But the story is, this Manziel thing was another one of those frustrations that McMahon had with Luck that built upon itself with other issues that we'll learn about that ultimately led to this nasty breakup. Now, in the end, Manziel is now playing with the fan-controlled football. We'll see how that goes. They kick off their inaugural season in February. And Callaway signed with the Miami Dolphins this year, but was cut before the end of the season. Vince McMahon, on behalf of Alpha Entertainment, has officially filed a suit against its former league commissioner, Oliver Luck. In the filing, McMahon says that Alpha has probable cause to receive over $570,000. The suit is a response in a claim that Luck filed last year that he is owed his entire contract after being fired without cause. McMahon stipulates that he indeed had cause for firing Luck, and this countersuit provides his claim. McMahon already stated his intent on suing Luck in October when he agreed to pay the legal costs, pledging any monies rewarded would go directly to the unsecured creditors in the bankruptcy suit. So this isn't about him pocketing it at all. This is about him wanting some money back, I guess. The filing for prejudgment remedies states that Luck repeatedly breached his employment agreement, pointing out to factors such as signing players who had questionable or problematic backgrounds. That, of course, refers to Antonio Callaway, who had been suspended by the NFL for violating the substance abuse policy. The alleged violation by Luck extended not releasing Callaway from his contract at the direct request of McMahon. In the filing, there are messages pertaining to the entire process of signing Callaway, along with other players who did not meet McMahon's standards. Another big claim made against Luck was his use of the device given to him by Alpha. Violations include conducting business for other entities not XFL related and trying to hide them. Each of these issues are drawn out in the filing to include each argument and example that McMahon has for alleged violation. We're talking about the monetary damages that McMahon is seeking. He says, quote, Luck's breach of the employment contract caused monetary damages to Alpha. Luck's failure to follow XFL policies by hiring Antonio Callaway and his disregard of McMahon's direct to immediate terminate Callaway caused Alpha to suffer a total of $888,000 in damages, including $158,000 in payments made to Callaway under his contract and $29,000 in workers' compensation payments to Callaway after he suffered his knee injury in practice. In addition, Alpha suffered $384,000 in damages for the salary payments made to Luck under the employment contract after March 13th, when he effectively abandoned his performance of duties as XFL Commissioner and CEO. The complete filing includes statements from McMahon, internal emails, text messages, the whole deal, questioning the signing of certain players to and from Luck. Other XFL executive messages are included too. Luck has since been ordered to provide any asset statement verifying that he can, if held to, pay the $572,000 sought in the countersuit. This continues to be ugly. Hopefully they can settle this out of court, and then we can get back into this chapter is officially closed, and we're on to the XFL in 2022. All right, we're here with Dr. Andrew Freese, who is one of the team physicians for the Dallas Renegades this past season. He's also a team physician for the University of Texas at Arlington. So, Dr. Freese, welcome to XFL Week in Review.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So the first question I always ask about people on my show is, give us your superhero origin story. So how did you get from, because I always just find this interesting, how did you get from high school kid to physician all the way to the XFL?
Yeah, I always loved sports growing up. I was a big football and basketball fan. I played basketball, but football was, kind of a huge passion of mine. I went to University of Texas. We had some great football teams when I was there with Vince Young and Cole McCoy. So, sports was always a huge thing to me. I ended up getting into medicine, not really thinking I would necessarily be a team physician or anything one day, but kind of when I got into medical school, and the nice thing about medical school is you get to try out every aspect of medicine. And so, when I got to orthopedics, it was kind of a clear match for me. It was fun. It was enjoyable. But, I also got to work with patients who were, maybe even if they weren't athletes, they were at least weekend warriors or people that wanted to be active and, had similar interests as I did growing up. And so it just kind of felt like a natural fit for me. And so, something I was always interested in. And then, one thing leads to another. And, I did a sports fellowship, and I was at the University of Iowa, and I got to hang out with the football team there, spend, time doing that, and really kind of growing a passion and a love for being a team physician. And, I was lucky enough to join an orthopedic practice here in the DFW area that got an opportunity to work with the XFL. And, that was a great experience. I wish it had gone on for a little bit longer than 5 years, five games. But, yeah, it was a great experience. So
how did that partnership between the XFL and place where you work at, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I work for, I'm part of a pretty big orthopedic group. We have, kind of all specialties represented, including sports medicine. And so, we just kind of helped provide all the medical coverage for the Renegades. So, that included, doing all the preseason physicals and, evaluating them ahead of time. And then, any medical issues that arose, during the season, whether it be in practice or at the game. And, that certainly included, sports related injuries, but also, we have some just kind of general medicine issues or illnesses that arise and things like that. And so, we're kind of able to, whether you're dealing with a concussion, a knee issue, or, you have any kind of rash or anything like that, we just kind of provided head to toe sports coverage for these athletes. And, we worked really closely with the trainers as well as the coaching staff in addition to the players. So, just trying to support them from, whatever aspect they needed and whatever we could provide.
Gotcha. And then, so to get into the Renegades injuries, tell us about Landry Jones's injury. Because, I mean, he was basically your top guy in the league, sort of the face of the XFL that everybody knew, comes in and all of a sudden he's had knee problems and he was out.
Yeah. So, he was kind of dealing with a little bit of a knee injury, in the preseason, kind of heading into the games. And so, he had an MCL injury that, he was doing pretty well with rehab and a brace. And, when he got injured in that game, it just kind of re-exacerbated that injury ultimately. And so, that's MCL is a little different than some of the other knee ligament injuries. I mean, a lot of times, these players can play with a brace on. And so a lot of it is just kind of managing the pain and the swelling and, their ability to regain mobility and flexibility and be active again. So, I mean, it obviously kind of hindered him with regards to some of his mobility, but, he's a tough guy and was able to play through it a little bit.
Now, was that an injury that would have sustained him? You think if they would have played a full season, he would have been able to come back, or was he pretty much done for the year?
No, I think he would have been able to come back. Yeah. These are injuries. I mean, it kind of depends on what position you play. I mean, these are things where linemen, they wear braces, from the get-go, from the outskirts of every game to just kind of avoid, exacerbating these kinds of injuries. But more skilled position players, they can be out a couple weeks sometimes with these. But no, these MCL injuries are rarely season ending. And so it kind of depends on the severity, but I certainly think Landry would have been able to come back and play within a couple weeks. Gotcha.
Now, one injury that was kind of out of the blue was Hal Mummy getting hit in the sideline.
Yeah.
What happened with all of that situation?
Yeah, he kind of got rolled up on, by a player kind of flying out of bounds. And, he didn't want any treatment at the time. He finished out the game. And so we saw him afterwards. He ended up having, a small fracture in his tibia. So kind of the shin bone right at the tibial plateau where it comes together with the knee. He had kind of a little kind of non-displaced hairline fracture, if you will. So he, those things usually heal up fine in a couple weeks, but, if you remember, he had to coach from the, kind of a seated position up in the press box after that. So yeah, that was just unlucky. I mean, these players, they fly off the sidelines all the time. And so, usually people get lucky, trying to avoid getting rolled up on or something like that. But yeah, he just kind of got taken out right at his knee. And, fortunately it wasn't anything worse.
Yeah. I mean, as an NFL fan for a long time, I've never seen a coach get injured like that before. So I was like, well, okay.
Yeah. It's probably been since Joe Paterno or something like that, maybe. Yeah.
So what was it like working with the XFL? And I mean, we've heard always just really good things about the league, that they were organized, that this wasn't like the AAF or some of these other leagues. So what was that like, your interaction with the XFL?
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I mean, they were, like you said, very well organized, very professional. But I thought it was a great atmosphere. I mean, everyone was really excited to be there, and they were excited about the league and the players and the games. And, that the atmosphere in Dallas was great. I mean, the fans were fantastic. They all had gear. They were all very, very eager to be there and support the team. So, I mean, myself and my partners, we had a great time being there. And, everyone on the coaching staff, was great. Coach Stoops was, great, very friendly, and it was a very warm environment. And it was great to be a part of.
Yeah. So what was it like working with, a legendary coach like Bob Stoops? He was the big coaching hire that kind of kickstarted everything. What was it like working with somebody like him?
Yeah. He's, real down to earth guy. I went to University of Texas, so it was, a little hard for me. He was, my absolute rival growing up at Oklahoma, but he just couldn't be a nicer guy. All the coaching staff, they were all just so nice, and, they were very thankful and appreciative to have us there. And, we were just so happy to be there. This is just such a fun experience for us to be around, and especially with something so exciting and new, like the XFL and all the attention that it garnered. So, we were happy to be there, but they were, they couldn't have made it any easier to be around. And the training staff that the Renegades had, was just top notch and excellent. The athletic trainers were great. So it was a very low stress environment, and we had a great time.
So did you talk any trash to Bob Stoops
at
all?
No.
Tell him anything like, hey?
No, I didn't. Yeah. I always thought about what I would say to him, but no, nothing like that.
So then you have everything shut down. What was that experience like, where all of a sudden you guys are working with players, I assume, going through injuries, and all of a sudden, what happens, and then everything shut down. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it's been really strange. And on top of the XFL, when you work in sports medicine or orthopedics, so much of what you do is, just sports and, the athletes and being present at the game and on the sidelines. And so, yeah, it's a really, it was a very strange time. It was obviously less busy, but, you're so used to being there every Saturday or Sunday or whatever, it just, obviously it changes your week to week lifestyle, but, on the weekends being at those games and, it's a little bit lonelier not being around. And so, I think at the time, myself, like everyone else, never imagined it would, carry on to such a degree for so long. And, even now, being at some of the UT Arlington games, it's so strange to not have fans and, to be sitting next to a cardboard cutout of someone. It's, just, I think I really I don't think anyone never had any idea or would underestimate how much of an impact it is to not have the fans or to consistently have games every, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so, I'm hopeful for a time when, that becomes more of a routine thing again. But yeah, it was strange and not for the better.
Yeah. So basically how did you hear the news that the XFL was closing and then all of a sudden bankruptcy? Online or?
I think I heard it on social media from what I remember, whether it was, Twitter or Instagram or whatever it was. I think just like everyone else, you're getting updates on your phone and then, you get online and you check it out and it seems to be, more and more likely that's the case. But yeah, especially with the XFL, it all happened so fast. Seemed overnight, and it's hard to know how much to take into the rumors, as they start on Twitter and then progress from there. But
so then the XFL is done and you doing your thing, and then all of a sudden you hear in August that The Rock has purchased the XFL. Like, what was your reaction? Our reaction was we were dumb. That it was not even on the radar.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when you heard about The Rock and Danny Garcia, Redbird Capital, coming in and rescuing the XFL and talking about bringing it back?
Yeah, it seems so exciting. I don't know if you watch Ballers on HBO, but I feel like The Rock is starting to live out this, Ballers thing in real life. And I think it's so exciting. I think, this group he has put together, and obviously, himself, I can only imagine good things for the XFL in the future. It seemed too good to be true at the time that, this is what the next step the XFL was taking. It's obviously not anything I would have ever imagined or dreamed could be.
Yeah. And now, so Has your office heard from the XFL at all as we are ramping up? Like, have you heard anything from the new ownership group?
I don't think that we have. I think there's been some discussions about having some preliminary talks about what that could look like, but I personally don't really know of any true details or that we've had any formal discussions or anything like that.
Gotcha. I mean,
yeah, our group would, we're, like I said, we had a great experience, and we hope the Renegades did as well, and that is something we would love and be very interested in the future.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Freeze, for joining us on the show and talking about your experience with the XFL. I think we are super nerds with XFL stuff, so we love to hear about Landry Jones and Hal Mummy and Bob Stoops and what kind of happened there. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us and talking a little XFL. Maybe we'll see you down the road.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the return. It's exciting.
Here's what you missed on the XFL Markcast. It's hard to talk about football when everything's going on that's going on in the world today. I mean, it's going to be hard to talk about football, but we got to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, just my one little note. Thank you all, so much for joining today, for choosing us, to come to for XFL stuff and kind of other nonsense. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to do our part. I tweeted today, I said, I only know how to do two things in this world, and that's talk about XFL football and annoy Paul Sanchez, and I'm going to do my best to do both of those things today. I'm very excited to see what this Washington defense does against Brady. I think that Chase Young is coming for the GOAT, as he said. But honestly, Smith did not look good in the game for Washington. He looked very immobile. And the thought that Henneke, please forgive me, Taylor took first reps yesterday and today for the football team for QB. So there's a very real possibility on Saturday night in prime time that we're going to see Taylor at least partially with the Washington football team, which would be crazy to see XFL player in a playoff. I mean, this is as big as it gets. I mean, I don't think you could get a bigger game for Taylor to potentially be starting, or at least get some play time with Alex Smith.
So moving on to teams that didn't make the playoffs, what's going on in Carolina? What is happening there?
I guess to bury the lead, PJ did have some playing time again on Sunday. When Teddy Bridgewater got sat for the Saints-Panthers game, I think maybe PJ would have wished that he would have not been put in the game because he threw 3 interceptions and did not have a very good showing.
That was a bad showing for PJ. There's speculation that the Panthers might take a quarterback at number 8. What?
Yeah, there's a lot. And that's why I messaged Sheena. I said, hey, Sheena, it seems like Rule is really unhappy with Teddy. He said that he really needs to have a tremendous offseason between now and next year. They had signed this guy, Tommy Stevens, to the active roster as like a third-string quarterback. Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on. It just seems like not as all well. It does not look good for PJ.
Of course, you can find XFL Markcast on XFL News Hub and wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube.
What's up, XFL Army? If you're a fan of the XFL News Hub and you have a telephone, which I know all of you do because you're sitting there playing on your phones all the time, then why not download the XFL News Hub app? That's right, it's on iTunes. It's on Android. We have an Android version and an iPhone version of the XFL News Hub app. So what do you get? You get the latest news from XFL News Hub, the premier source of XFL news in the universe. Plus, you get push notifications when we have breaking news. You will be the first to know. You can leave a comment on some of the news right from your phone. Plus, you get this podcast on your phone as well. Remember, you can leave us reviews on the Google Play Store or iTunes. It links to other social media, our other social media accounts, and so much more. Be in the know. I know you're on your phones. People are on their phones all the time. They never get off their phones. So why not just download the XFL News Hub app on your Android or iPhone today? All you need to do is go to the Google Play Store or iTunes and just type in XFL News Hub. That's XFL News Hub. Download our app on your phone today. All right, let's get into our social media stuff about the XFL, NFL files opposition to the XFL's Houston Roughnecks logo. This is on the Facebooks. John says Oilers don't even exist anymore. Wonder why the NFL didn't file when the USFL came out with the Oakland Invaders. You think the name was a coincidence? Bruce says the Oilers logo is still owned by the Titans. Blah, blah, blah. Bruce says, when the NHL's Winnipeg Jets came back, I wonder why they didn't stick with the old red, white, and blue logos at the time the Phoenix Coyotes still own the logo. Kenneth says, did they not have a trademark the first year of the league? This should get thrown out simply based on timing. That is true, and I've said that. Didn't somebody knew who the Houston Oilers were? Gabe says that league doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if he's talking about the XFL, because it certainly does, sort of. I mean, it's coming back. Jamie says they just realized that now. Heck, someone needs to use the Oilers logo. It was my favorite helmet color scheme ever. Aaron says, seriously? This is an immediate concern? True. Kenneth says, man, the NFLs are a bunch of bleeps. John says, no fun league, added again. Ricky, is this really necessary? Seth, boo. MJ Vargas, jealousy? Matthew says, there should be a requirement of having used the oil rig logo actively in this century in order to sue like this. Thanks, lawyers. Well, they're not suing, but they're having a little disagreement about the logo there. On to the YouTubes, lots of YouTube stuff. Hadrian says, Pep Hamilton, I guess talking about last week's show, Pep Hamilton hasn't been fired, just Anthony Lynn. I know, but usually when the head coach gets fired, the whole staff is gone too. And rumor has it Pep Hamilton is there to stay since he's one of the reasons why Justin Herbert is what he is now. Totally agree with that. We will find out about that. Name says Dwayne Haskins is someone to look at for the XFL. Certainly, if he does not catch on with the team, Haskins, Manziel, Colin Kaepernick, guys that potentially the XFL might look into, unlike Vince McMahon had no interest in. Paladin Dome. I saw Flimo's episode about Haskins. From what I've heard, he can be a hard worker if he actually puts his mind to it. He's more prone to coast on subpar stats and performance. My advice, if the XFL picks him up, keep him on practice squads or Team 9. That, again, there's no harm. If he's not doing anything, put him on Team 9. There's no wrong with that. Dennis says, know your history. The CFL is the oldest pro football league. The CFL does not play in March or February. They play May through the Grey Cup in November. This is from last week's episode. That's great that the CFL is the oldest pro football league. When I was talking about playing in the cold, somebody had mentioned about having Canada play, have Canada team in the XFL, and I said no because it's cold in March and February. I never said anything about the CFL. I knew the CFL plays after that. We're anticipating covering the CFL, especially as a lot of XFL players will get some work in now that it looks like that league is a go, but we won't know that for a while now. And hopefully things will chill out, as I think they are starting to very lightly. Tony says, I had Guardian season tickets, was at both games. They were cold, had snow at one, loved it. I'm a wuss. What can I tell you? I'm a beach guy. Even though if you watch on YouTube, I am of Irish heritage. I even did a ancestry deal. I'm like 90-something% Irish. I'm a beach guy. I grew up on Long Island near the Long Island Sound. I like the water. I like the warmth. I like stepping outside in the warmth. And how fantastic would it be to be at an XFL game in my shorts and a tank top, chilling, rather than 50 layers of clothes and I can't feel my fingers. However, if you enjoy that kind of stuff, more power to you. I don't have a problem with that. JC Film Z 509 says, nice, got tickets the Dragons game against the Renegades in Seattle at CenturyLink and loved it. Was looking forward to buying season tickets next season. Oh man, I cannot wait until they start talking about season tickets again. So if you don't know the story, I don't know if I told this story before. So here's how cool I am. So I went to all the DC Defenders games, and that last weekend, I was struggling trying to find somebody to go with me, and I was like, do I go by myself? And then I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just sell the tickets. So I wound up selling. I mean, I got sweet seats right near the field, like not even like I'm right there. In the near the end zone, near where the beer snake is. I'm back in there. At some point, I should have shown pictures. Anyways, so I'd sold my tickets, and I sold them both. I had 2 tickets, and I sold them. So you got to remember, I paid what, $200 for season tickets or something. What was it? Or $200 a seat? I forget what it was. Was it something like that? I don't remember the numbers. But I wound up selling both seats for $100, and then 2 days later, the league shut down. And I didn't have to return my money, and somebody bought them. I don't know. They got a refund. I got $100. So whenever the day that they say, here's the season tickets, they're on sale now, it will be, here's Mark's credit card. That's it. So anyway, Oliver XD talks about 2022 is done. I could have sworn it was 2020 with a little angry face. I must have said 2022 is done. I meant 2020, clearly, but I appreciate the correction there. I do a lot. Of course, we all know about the pro wrestling side of things I do, and so I screw up. And I am the editor and everything else of this show. So when things kick in and I can have an editor do all that stuff and clean up this stuff, then we'll do that then. But yeah, Mark makes mistakes. I can admit it. Jack says, nice. Thank you very much. Fortnite Swifty. I think he plays Fortnite. Talking about relocation. The Atlanta Falcons should be an XFL team from a Falcons fan. I have said this multiple times. No offense to all Falcon fans out there. You guys have a terrible sports town, and I'll leave it at that. Poo Poo Head. Now, who would name their child Poo Poo Head? It's really not... They're not going to make any friends with Poo Poo Head. He says, go Vipers. Cool. Talking about Tampa Bay Vipers potentially moving to Orlando. I don't think that will happen. Jared, I think you should make an award for the XFL player that plays the best in the NFL during the season. Can you make a name for it? You could separate it from defense and offense. I like that idea, Jared. Actually, that's a great idea. Our XFL NFL player of the year. I mean, here's the thing, and that's a great question. That is a great. Clearly, I mean, it's Parham, it's Henneke, it's PJ Walker. I mean, I would honestly probably give it to Taylor. But if you have an idea out there, you want to give the season isn't quite over. Well, I mean, regular season's over yet. And we were going to have a whole wrap up of that. But I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. I think we were going to do that. I like that. The INTs from PJ Walker I've seen were just deep throws, so it wasn't as bad as the stats shown. He was 0 for 5 at one point, but the Panthers were dead anyways versus the Saints. True. And he also said, I'm glad Josh Johnson is still in the NFL. Yes, he is. Drifto616, I thought the season was canceled because I have never saw an advertisement or anything of the XFL marketing is terrible. The season was canceled in 2020. There's going to be no season. This is Danny Garcia talking about the league. So you're not going to see anything now. I'm not really sure when you were talking about that, but in our circles, everybody thought the marketing of the XFL was fantastic. If you're upset that the marketing of the XFL that you haven't heard anything right now, it's because no one really works there yet because it's coming back. Okay. X Ghost Boy plays X. It's obvious that if the MLFB is successful, the XFL and MLFB will merge. Definitely not. No need to merge. No need to merge. Polly258 talking about relocation to Chicago. I don't know about that. I don't think Chicago will. There's no need to. Chicago's too cold. Cyril Moore talking about the NFL opposes the Houston Roughnecks logo. Says this is stupid. Paladin Demo, I doubt there's still active sales of Oilers merch going around, not to mention the Oilers and Roughnecks are completely different. We'll see. We'll see when they go to court. Real Go Get Up the Paperboy says, haven't they noticed that the Roughnecks logo has an H in it instead of an oil rig? That's true too. Good point. Daryl says the XFL should just change the Houston Roughnecks logo. It's not worth any trouble. Now, if you notice, there is a logo of a dude's face. So I wonder if that might potentially be used for a logo there. Addertude said the NFL has no real leg to stand on, seeing as how the Oilers aren't even a team anymore. Now they're Tennessee Titans, aside from the fact that the XFL placed a giant H over the oil rig. You have got to know. I mean, you are paying, they probably paid $1 million, the XFL, to come up with these logos, and you knew that they did their research and homework about this, if this was going to be an issue or not with the, and then the NFL wanted to fight it, but then the pandemic, I don't know. We'll see how this all plays out. You can't mess with The Rock, NFL. NFL, I know you think you're all the biggest, but this is The Rock we're talking about. Titans boy TC, so let me get this straight. They have no problem with high schools and Pee Wee football leagues using their logos. This is true. Get it straight, not let me this, says NC, whatever. Hadrian Roque says this is how you know the NFL really wants to be the only one on the market, no matter what the costs. I'm not really sure what their angle is on all this, to be honest with you. Ooh, lots of reaction. Jason Smith, this is BS. Come on, NFL, quit being peaches. That's what it looks like. Paul says, so ridiculous. Cardman, this is dumb. In the NFL standpoint, the Houston Oilers doesn't exist anymore. DJP, NFL has been hating on XFL from the time Vince announced it was coming back. Now you wait till now, almost a year later, and try to reject it. We'll see where it goes there. Alex, talking about expansion, says hoping to see the league expand by at least 2024. That's maybe likely. He says put a team in Oklahoma. Maybe these, now that they're kind of free to move about the country, now that the AAF is gone. Gloria Lopez says, hey, NFL, back off! Exclamation point several times. The XFL Houston Roughnecks logo is nowhere near the former Houston Oilers logo. Leave them alone and stop trying to make trouble. Stay in your lane. Leave the logo alone. There you heard it. Gloria said it. That's it. On to the Twitter about XFL was never interested in Johnny Manziel. Blue Devils 209 says why he's elite QB just because he had trouble pass doesn't mean anything. He's still a baller, loves Johnny football. PLS2061 talking about the Johnny Manziel court docs. Duh. Well, there you go. I just found it interesting, and I've said this also, is that this is more to do about another notch in Vince McMahon's annoyance with Oliver Luck than more than anything else. He was kind of getting annoyed even back then, but we'll see. See how that plays out. Paul M. Jackson 9 on Twitter says, Penn State is linebacker U. Wisconsin is offensive line U. Are the St. Louis Battlehawks quarterback X? Interesting. Yeah, you're talking, all right, Josh Johnson was there. Taylor Henneke was there. Jordan Tyamu was there. I know Cardell had a quick tryout. PJ Walker, I think I mentioned him. And then you had, Tyree Jackson converting him to tight end. So they're all out there in the league. Yeah, maybe that's where you find your next great quarterback is the XFL. About the Houston Roughnecks logo situation, Wedge 77 says, what a crock. And Go Dog 640-15451 says, clearly, XFL's a threat. Go Roughnecks, the only oil derrick in H-Town! Exclamation point several times. Also, on the social media stuff, we are on the emailers. Our own Paladin Dome sent us some really cool pictures of his Battlehawks projects complete. And if you're on the YouTube, you can check them out. They're really cool, like figures that got the nice coloring in there. I mean, he's got some really close-up of some of the players, catcher, blitzer, line. I mean, this is really cool stuff. So Paladin Dome doing some really nice artwork in his free time with, everything going on in the world. So appreciate those photos. But yeah, if you want to check them out, check out our YouTube channel for all that fun stuff. And you can see the pictures on there on the live podcast. That's what you got to do. All right, that's it for this week's, folks. Again, we want to thank Dr. Andrew Freeze, one of the team physicians for Dallas Renegades, for joining us on the program. It was really great to kind of talk a little bit back behind the scenes with Landry Jones, Hal Mummy, and some other things going on with the Dallas Renegades. We look to have more interviews coming up in the near future, so stay tuned for that. We are, we're in the process of adding some more interviews. I think we're, want to start focusing maybe on some potential players, coaches. So definitely working on some interviews. Let's just leave it at that. Super nerds out there, you want to know something? If you go to fantasy.prowrestlingnewshub.com, you can see the alpha version of our fantasy. It's fantasy wrestling, but the platform is in place to do fantasy football. We have a couple teams doing it so far. I mean, everything is working correctly. People are dropping, making trades, doing waiver wire pickups, setting up their league, their pre-draft. We're going to have a couple drafts this week, so I'm a little nervous on how that's going to go this week. But that's coming. That's the real big piece, is if we can get past the drafting part, because the problem is you're dealing with people in different time zones. And I coded it and it works for me, but on a bigger scale, how is that drafting going to be work? Now, what's cool about this draft is that either you can either auto draft, which the other system wouldn't allow you to do. So you can do it that way, or you can be live and it will skip over the people that are set to auto draft. Or if they're live, but then they disappear, which we know what happens, and it will go through and do the draft. So I'm really curious to see how a couple of drafts take place this week. I'm actually doing one Thursday night. If you want to learn more about the stuff, join us on the Discord. I've talked about this before, but my plan is to run this all the way and through August timeframe, and then actually do an XFL dev draft. And we plan on doing that. So that should be pretty cool as well. So remember, next week's question of the week, with NFL coaches being let go, are any of these guys a good fit in the XFL? Let us know about that, plus your reaction to everything going on this week. Of course, remember, if you want to be in touch with the show, email podcast@xflnewshub.com with your MP3s or videos, or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and like and subscribe us on the YouTube channel. We want to blow that channel up, make it big this go around. All right, my friends, that's it for me. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything else. Follow us all over on social media. You can download our app. We plan on working on that over the summer. And you can listen to us anywhere. Remember, for show notes, xflnewshub.com/xfl-podcast. And that's it for me, folks. That's all I can think of right now. Join us on the Discord, of course, especially if you're interested in Fantasy XFL coming soon to a theater near you. You can do that as well. So thanks for listening. God bless. Say a prayer for our country. Let's just get this thing over with, get on with our lives. We get these masks off hopefully soon, and then we can get back to hopefully some XFL news and people getting hired, and we get some fun stuff to cover for you guys over this summer. I'm super excited about that, and I know you too. So mahalo, God bless, and I will see you all later.